Welcome one and all, it's time for an Age of Sigmar battle report, Stormcast Eternals versus Ironjaws. Now, I felt the time was right to try out a few new units that I've never used before, including not Krondis, but KARAZAI. So, whenever I attend a tournament, in at least, I would say, 2 of the games out of 5, my opponent assumes that Krondis is actually KARAZAI before the game. So, why not give KARAZAI a try using the Krondis model? They're basically the same. KARAZAI just has a scar and doesn't wear the gold paraphernalia. So we're going to try out KARAZAI. And what is KARAZAI good at? Murdering lots of stuff. Better at clearing out large units. He's got the tail swipe, which is better depending on how many models you're facing. So if you're facing a lot of models, it's very good. So the kind of things that I would traditionally struggle with as Stormcast, such as big blobs of wolves or rats, or anything that's not very good, and I'd be wasting my time shooting it with things like long strikes, where I'm paying a lot for each shot, and each shot is not actually doing much because it's just a big sea of useless wounds that I have to deal with. So KARAZAI, potentially good at that job. So, I've decided it's going to be a KARAZAI list. What do we want in the KARAZAI list? We want the Praetors to give him that ward save, since he's going to be getting stuck into combat the whole time. And also, an opportunity to try out the Vexillor as well, who I painted a while ago. I haven't tried him yet, so you can see him down there. You'll see some close-ups in a minute. He's going to hang around with KARAZAI as well. Then, because I've got 2 small little units that want to keep up with this big fighting monster, then I want ways of teleporting them. So we've got, obviously, the teleport chamber, and I've also brought in the Lord Relictor for the translocation ability. So potentially good combo there to help these guys keep up with KARAZAI if he wants to flap away quite far. Then we've got the Questor Soulsworn, because I just like them. I think they're a good, efficient blob, and especially on their quest-marked objective, they're very survivable. Now, another thing I'm trying out, the Storm Coven. So let's go into some close-up images here. You can see the Storm Coven there. I've had them painted for a little while now. Haven't tried them out yet, but since I'm not using Krondis or any other wizard, why not try out the Storm Coven? So what do? If they're contesting an objective, then they become power level 2, so 2 spells, and their War Scroll spell is actually quite good. You can either strike first on your own unit or strike last on an enemy unit, and on average, it is a spell that succeeds because it goes off on a 7. So, potentially with the Lord Relictor, we could have a little combo there as well, with the Lord Relictor teleporting them, and then being able to use their spell, because it's only a 12-inch range, so if I teleport them, for example, over here, and then use that spell on a big blob of orcs, that could be something I'm going to look for during this game as well. Got 3 Prosecutors, only 3, couldn't fit in any more into this list because of the units I wanted to try out, so we'll see how they do. And it is the Sentinels of the Bleak Citadel's sub-faction, which means I'm going to be giving this 1 unit of Prosecutors a ward save for the entire game, which isn't an optimal use of a sub-faction, but I was looking at the options, and with this specific list, it seemed like the only one that was really usable. There's another one where you can give buffs to a Warrior Chamber unit when they're close to a non-Warrior Chamber, non-monster Stormcast Eternals unit, but that didn't seem to be very likely with the units I had available to me. The Lord Relictor, by the way, has a mirror shield, so he can't be shot at, but that won't be relevant at all in this game. And he also has shock and awe, in case he's going to get near units that are dropping down from the sky. If anyone's watching this live, by the way, feel free to comment along, and I'll keep my eye on the chat. What else have we got in this list then? So, other than... oh, you can actually see the lovely Questor Soulsworn fur/feathers, whatever it is. I think it's supposed to be fur. But it took me a very long time to paint those, so you're going to look at it, damn it. There's the Vexillor. KARAZAI for the purposes of this game. Then we've got the Morbid Conjuration, so we've got the Purple Sun ready to go. Also, 6 Annihilators with Grand Hammers. Now, the list that I'm pondering for the future is going to feature potentially Vanguard Paladors when I've got those painted. They're on my painting table right now, but they're not finished yet. So I'm going to give Grand Hammer Annihilators another go. Reinforced unit of 6. So along with KARAZAI, that is quite a killy, murdery sort of list. Although, as we know, on average, Annihilators, well, I don't suppose it's really average. It's just their curse that they drop down and then fail the charge. On average, you do fail it, but you are going to pay for a reroll, definitely, with such a powerful unit that wants to be charging. And if they do get in when they drop down, the amount they would have had to have rolled is going to set off their put strike last on the enemy ability as well. So that's going to synergize quite well if I can get KARAZAI into combat as well. But KARAZAI is also a monster that doesn't always want to strike first, weirdly enough. Because, depending on what you're fighting, if you feel like you're only going to take a few points of damage, you might actually want them to hit you first, because it actually makes KARAZAI even better at fighting when he's taken a few wounds. So, maybe you don't want to go first. So that's another good reason to have kind of a fragile hammer unit in there with KARAZAI, because sometimes he doesn't care about striking first anyway, so they can just go first. And other times I'll have cast strike first or strike last with the Storm Coven, or I'll have set off the Annihilator's strike last ability if they charge with a roll higher than an 8. Then, what is this unit here? It's not Bow Judicators. Bow Judicators are, of course, getting deleted at some point soon. So, I'm trying them out as Vigilors, because why not? What else are they going to proxy as when the time comes for them to retire? So I think they're just going to be Vigilors long term now. So what do? They give you +1 to hit on a unit if you successfully wound that unit with the Vigilors. So it's like getting an all-out attack, but with every unit that attacks that one unit. And also, you're not paying command points for that, obviously. So other than that, their damage output is a little bit mediocre. You're really just looking for that one wound, so the big scary units, like the Annihilators and KARAZAI, can get in there and murder things. So, let's go over my opponent's list then, which I have right here. So it's Zogrok's Ironmongers, which is an army of renown, and it is 3 drops, so it is 1 drop more than me, so I'm going to get the choice of going first, because I've got the Vexillor as inside somebody else's drop. He's not leading a regiment. So, oh yeah, the General's regiment is KARAZAI, the Annihilators, the Praetors, the Questors, and the Storm Coven, and the second regiment is the Lord Relictor, the Knight Vexillor, the Prosecutors, and the Vigilors. So, Zogrok's Ironmongers. There is Zogrok Anvil Smasher, who is the General, who I think... Let's see. Because obviously a lot of these guys look fairly similar, but I think I can tell them apart. So I guess this is the guy on the big base there. Then we've got 2 units of Ardboys. One of them is down here, unit of 10, another one there, reinforced to 20. So that is a decent chunk of wounds there with a good armor save. And if they're wholly within 12 of each other, then I believe, is it wholly? I think it's wholly within 12. Then they also get 5+ ward save, which is very good. However, that does lead me to immediately identify the smaller one of those 2 units as the weak link of the army. Because if they don't have their ward save, suddenly they're a lot less survivable, because I've got some very good rend in this army. The 2 big hammer units I'm using, KARAZAI, is going to be at least -2, and one of his attacks is actually -3 against infantry, and then Annihilators are going to be -2, and because everything in my opponent's army is infantry, I'm going to be using the Honor Guard ability to give them +1 rend against infantry on the charge, which obviously they're hoping to do. I think that's just on the charge. So we're going to hope to kill this unit of 10 and then take away the ward save from the unit of 20. Then, what else is in here? There is a weird knob shaman, who is very identifiable with that big plume of smoke coming off the staff. There is a unit of brutes reinforced, which is, I think, this one here. So these guys are even bigger, beefier than the Ardboys. Then there's a mega boss. You know what? I'm not even so sure which one's Zogrok Anvil Smasher and which one is the mega boss anymore. Out of these 2. I'm not sure exactly which one's which. And then there is... Let's see, who else have we got in here? Ardboy's big boss, which is the smaller boss over there. Brute Ragers, which is this unit of naked Ironjaws. So they don't have as good a save, but they're very scary in combat. I think they have bonuses against monsters as well, which is going to be scary for KARAZAI, potentially. And then there is... Oh, they're reinforced. And then there's another unit of brutes that are not reinforced, which is this unit here, I think. Oh no, all the way out on this side, so that's brutes, that unit 5 there. So if we go to the wide shot, I'll show you where all the different units are. So we've got the unit 5 brutes up there, we've got 10 Ardboys, 20 Ardboys, 10 brutes, and 6, I think it's 6 brute rages, so they are reinforced, and then we've got all the heroes in the middle. So, this battle plan is the Jaws of Gallet, so we've got 2 giant places of power in the middle, which I'm not really going to be attempting to make use of, because they don't coincide with where I want my wizards to be, at least for now. And at the end of a player's turn, or from the second battle round on, at the end of your turn, if you're the underdog, you can delete one of the 5 objectives. So, how do I normally lose this game? Because I normally lose on this scenario, and it's because I'm too aggressive immediately, take the lead, make my opponent the underdog, and then they start deleting my objectives, and they've got a big swarm of garbage sitting on their own objectives that I can't take off them because Stormcast aren't that great at taking objectives off people. Don't have particularly large model counts. So, my plan is to make my opponent go first, and I'm not going to try any sneaky things like redeploying onto an objective. I'm not even anywhere near this one. I'm only going to be focusing on this objective, and then if my opponent takes 2 and then picks up maximum points with maybe an easy battle tactic like perhaps seize the center. I don't know how easy that would be because I think everything is actually very slow on this list. So if my opponent gets maximum points, I will then try to get just below maximum points. So maybe I could be the underdog for a change. Wouldn't that be exciting? We'll see though, because if I go first and start taking objectives, my opponent might intentionally stay off them for 1 turn to become the underdog, and then start deleting the objectives that are easy for me, or the quest marked objective, which is this one in the middle, marked with that orange token there. I don't remember where this orange token came from. I'm pretty sure someone gave it to me. But that is the quest marked objective in the middle, so the questors are going to try and get on that one early. So let's go into turn 1. So I give away the turn, as I said, and my opponent goes for take their land and chooses this big piece of terrain that is close to me. Now, this is risky, but we've got spells going off now. You can see this endless spell popping up. And there's buffs going out as well. There's all kinds of buffs like 3d6 charge, and bonuses to charge. I think there's crit mortals, I think, is on this unit, and there's a character around here that gives them bonuses to that as well, so they do it on a 5 instead of a 6, which is very scary. I counter pray with the Lord Relictor to get some extra PP generated, some prayer points, and managed to get 3 of them. And this big unit of Ardboys moves up. The smaller unit gets to within range to take my land on this objective. However, because, oh, you can see these brutes get onto the objective in the top left as well, I redeploy my questors and manage to roll a 4, which is just enough to get enough models within 3 of this piece of terrain to deny the battle tactic. So unless my opponent charges me as well and successfully reaches. So this unit of brutes had the 3d6 charge spell put on them, so they've got 2 attempts to make a charge into the Questa Soulsworn, and if they make it, obviously they would kill enough to take this objective, which wouldn't be very nice. But they do not make the charge. I think they needed about 15 on 3 dice, so they didn't quite make it with the 2 attempts. So thankfully I've denied the battle tactic in turn 1. Now you might be thinking my entire game plan was to become the underdog rather than let my opponent be the underdog. However, I think that 4-point swing for a failed battle tactic is enough to warrant abandoning that plan and giving up on that and just going all out trying to score points. Because I'm going to get the questors onto this objective next turn so they can get their ward save. And I don't think I'll be able to hold it because I think the enemy will probably redeploy onto it or countercharge me. So I won't hold the objective probably, but I'll get my ward save and should be able to hold the enemy up. I'm not going to worry about this one right now. It's got 5 brutes on it. I don't have any units that I want to send over there right now. KARAZAI is going to try and murder this unit of 10 Ardboys, and I'm going to go aggressive with the Annihilators as well, drop them down and try and murder the unit of 20 Ardboys. So if KARAZAI can kill 10 first, then the other 20 will no longer have a ward save for when the Annihilators get there. that's the plan anyway. We'll see if that works out. I'm also going to use the Vigilors to shoot at one of the units as well to get +1 to hit against them. So, 6 points for the Ironjaws. On to Stormcast Eternals turn 1, and I go for Reclaim the Realms. So my thinking here is that, obviously, with the positioning of the objectives, it's possible at some point in the game that my opponent could have units in all 4 table sections. So I don't really want to be doing that battle tactic near the end, especially if I need my living units to contest objectives. So I'm going to do that now. And it should be fairly easy because I've got like the Vexillor, I've got the Lord Relictor that don't want to be in combat, I've got Prosecutors that don't care about being in combat yet, and I'm going to drop down Vigilors probably up in this top corner as well. So it should be quite easy to get units in each of the 4 table quarters away from the enemy, even with my aggressive game plan of getting everyone into combat. Not everyone, but scary units. So, Reclaiming the Realms. The Lord Relictor generates a load more PP, but doesn't do anything with it yet. And KARAZAI chomps in towards the 10 Ardboys, and you can see, murders all of them. And the unit of... let's see. Oh yeah, so the Questors, I got them onto the objective. This one should actually be towing on it. I think it's been slightly nudged off, but just enough to tow onto the objective. They then get countercharged by the reinforced unit of Brutes, but because I've got my 5-up ward save, the Soulsworn are able to survive that round, which is good because it ties up this unit for next turn, which was the goal, just to get my ward save in effect. The Vigilors drop down in the top corner, shot a single wound onto this big unit of Ardboys, but the Annihilators failed their rerollable 9-inch charge, so they didn't get in there to capitalise on that, because if they had made it in, they could have put Strike Last onto the unit as well, which would have meant that I could go first with KARAZAI, should I say, and then the Annihilators after that before they get hit. But KARAZAI, murdering 10 Ardboys, I think he killed about 5 of them with his tail. It could have been maybe slightly less than that, it might have been 3. And then just chomped the rest of them. So, impressive work from KARAZAI there. But not from the Annihilators. So I score 8 points. So I'm in the lead, making my opponent the underdog. Which means that, if we look at the state of the table, my opponent can start deleting objectives that I like. So probably starting with this one would most likely be the first one to go, if my opponent goes next. So I'm thinking, if I win the roll, I may want to take the double here, because the Annihilators failed their charge. So that is over 400 points there. That if they get charged by those Ironjaws, I think that could be bad news for them. I would like to get the double, I think. I don't have to worry about this 3-dice charge unit countercharging anyone, because they're locked down in combat. I can get a much easier charge into this big unit of Ardboys, and I can throw KARAZAI in there as well and double up on them. Whereas, if my opponent goes next, then one of my objectives is getting deleted, and I think this big blob of 20, potentially with these guys as well, they could have 3-dice charge cast on them. They could actually make it into KARAZAI. These guys could possibly get into the Annihilators as well as KARAZAI, and all maybe go in together. Or maybe they go into the Annihilators first, and then pile in towards KARAZAI, so some of them can hit him, but not within 3 at the start, so he can't use his rampage on them. So I think that's just a bit too scary looking, so I'm going to try and take the turn if I win the roll. And I do win it, so I'm taking the double, no battle tactic, but the plan is to just murder everybody. So, I'm going to try, with my, if we go back and look at the wide shot again, the Relictor is right here. I'm going to try and teleport the Storm Coven into position so that I can put Strike Last onto this unit of Ardboys. That way, even if the Annihilators charge with less than 8 inches, I can still have that unit striking last. Or I can teleport them over here and put Strike First on Krondys, for example, or KARAZAI. I'm going to keep calling him that since it is technically the Krondys model. So that's the plan. However, the Lord Relictor rolls a 1 on the prayer, so they're not being teleported right now, so there's not much I can do spellcasting-wise, and in fact they fail to cast the Purple Sun as well. So, not having a lot of luck with the Storm Coven so far, but they are nice models, so I'm enjoying them just being on the table. And then look at the results of this. So the Annihilators, they move up closer, making it a 5-inch charge, but then they roll about 10 anyway, so they do put Strike Last on the Ardboys. KARAZAI gets in as well. The Praetors moving up behind KARAZAI, and after everyone's struck, the 20 Yard boys are just obliterated, and it's pretty much all the work of the Annihilators. You'll also notice that the Ragers are gone as well. That is because they had, I think they had a counter spell of a 3 dice charge put on them, so they could do a counter charge. They countercharged into the Praetors and KARAZAI. They killed 2 of the Praetors. They were trying to get rid of KARAZAI's ward save. The Annihilators completely whomped all of the Yard boys on their own, all 20 of them. I think they had taken a few wounds first from the Vigilors, obviously putting the +1 to hit on them as well. And KARAZAI, I think with his shooting attack, might have hit them as potentially as well. He hit somebody with his shooting attack. So the Ragers are dead, and the big blob of 20 Yard boys are also dead. Without their ward save, they couldn't stand up to a good attack roll from the Annihilators. And yeah, that is not looking good. That is a corpse pile in the corner. So the Ironjaws are down to this big unit of brutes that do finish off the Questors. I decided not to take them out of combat because I didn't want the brutes to countercharge into me. So I'll let the Questors die this turn, and a fresh unit of 3 can come back at some point though for a command point. These 5 brutes aren't much of a threat, and all the others are heroes. So they're still fairly scary, but I think this is pretty much game won. I don't see a way back for the Ironjaws here. 6 points scored, but it's not really about the points there, it was about the murder. And because of the countercharge, I was able to take out 2 very scary fighting units for the loss of only a single Annihilator. And yeah, you can see I put Finest Hour on KARAZAI to get his save up. He doesn't really need the +1 to wound, and I used all-out attack on him as well against the Ragers. So, into the Ironjaws turn 2. Slay the Entourage. There's only 1 Praetor left, so should be easy pickings for these brutes. So they're going to go for him. And I fail to rally any of the Praetors as well. I do attempt it, but I don't roll enough on the dice. So the brutes and all the heroes slam into KARAZAI and the Praetors. They all get in there, apart from the Shaman. I countercharge with the Annihilators. I haven't done much countercharging ever. I can't think of the last time I did a countercharge. It's been quite a while, it doesn't come up very often. But I'm keeping my command points quite well because I'm using the Vigilors to put +1 to hit against a specific unit. So I'm probably using slightly less all-out attacks than I would normally in this game. So that is preserving a little bit of points. And if you're careful using Finest Hour, then maybe all-out defense is slightly less important as well, unless you really need to double down. So countercharge them in. They don't roll very high though, so I'm not able to put Strike Last onto one of the enemies, and I'm not able to hit one of the big fighty heroes. There's only the small hero there, and these 2 are the scary ones. Okay, so you can see that the split attacks from the brutes put 2 wounds onto KARAZAI and 0 wounds onto the Praetors, so that's a failed battle tactic again. Those are the ward saves, I think, of the Praetor. So, very nice. And then KARAZAI does ultimately drop down to 9 wounds as a result of the attacks. I think this guy gets to go first, and then the brutes can go after him. And after everyone else is struck, KARAZAI and the Annihilators completely destroy the 2 fighty characters of the enemy, so I don't need to remember which one's which now, because they're dead. The small hero is still alive, and the brutes have still got 5 remaining. So not a great turn for the Ironjaws, but they do pick up 4 points. And they choose to delete the objective, the obvious one that's near my faction terrain and the Storm Coven. And I get the first crack at round 3, which is good. So I go for Seize the Centre because I'm easily going to clear out the remaining enemies there with KARAZAI and the Annihilators. The Storm Coven, I think I teleport them with the Lord Relictor, or the terrain piece, I can't remember which I used, just to get them to the centre, and then I use a command point to bring back a unit of 3 Questors, and they drop down there as well for Seize the Centre. And that's 10 points, because there's only really a unit of brutes left for the enemy. And we've got a nice upside down picture of the destruction turn. We figure out there are 0 battle tactics that the Ironjaws can do now. That's because they've only got 1 unit left, and most of the battle tactics require you to have 2 units. And the ones that don't are usually to do with killing a specific enemy unit, and my opponent already failed to do that one earlier, failed to do take their land earlier. So there are physically no battle tactics that the enemy can complete for the rest of the game with this one unit, which is sad times for the Ironjaws. We've got Dancer in the chat. 7+ cast is 58% odds, and about 45% if opponent has Unbind, assuming no bonuses. Not that reliable. I think it's reliable enough. I think if you're looking at round about 50% of the time, casting such a powerful effect as Strike First or Strike Last, and that's only if they have one cast as well. If that's the only thing you're trying, you may well have another spell if you're able to get them onto an objective as well. So I feel like it is a good possibility there. Also, you can put them on a place of power and use that. And with the amount of teleporting options Stormcast have, you can usually get them in a position you want them to be in fairly reliably. If you've got the priest to translocate them, and if that fails, you've still got ways of getting them there on the turn previously to the spell casting you want to do. The teleporting is the only way to get it in the hero phase, though, to cast the spell immediately afterwards. But I do agree, it's not 100% guaranteed, but I do like the odds still. Especially if you're having a list that can have multiple instances of Strike First or Strike Last that go off. There's a few different ways you can get those. Strike Last with the Annihilators charging in, you can get Strike First with some Extremist Chamber units, which would be your Star Drakes or Dracodian Guard. You can take the sub-faction to give them Strike First, potentially. So I like it. So the rest of this game is going to be very straightforward, because my opponent is just sitting on that one objective. There's no point leaving it alone, because then I'll just teleport onto it and steal it. And then he's also just deleting my objectives via being the underdog for the rest of the game. So I'm going to end with only this objective up here. And lovely blurry pictures there. I've got the easy battle tactics though. I've got take the flanks, which is easily enough done, because I've got the Vigilors still hanging out up here. The Prosecutors hanging out there. My opponent can't even afford to go and chase the Prosecutors, because then this objective will be left open for me to teleport onto. And then I'm just for the fun of it, throwing everyone at that one unit of 5 towards the end. And again, my opponent is just holding an objective, but can't get any battle tactics. Chasing him down, just scoring the 2 points for holding an objective. Take their land, easy, Vigilors are already there. And I get the Prosecutors in on the charge into the Brutes, but nothing much is done either way, and that's just a 4-point end, because I'm not holding any objectives now, because they've all been deleted. But obviously, that is a sizable win for the Stormcast Eternals, and KARAZAI definitely convincing me that he's worth a try at a tournament. I don't think anyone would have an issue with this Krondys model being used as KARAZAI. I've seen other people doing that at events, and half my opponents mistake Krondys for KARAZAI anyway. They just assume it's going to be KARAZAI because he's so hot right now. Is it worth taking this exact list? I've got a lot of points in things that didn't contribute that much to the game. The Lord Relictor and the Stormcoven failed a lot of their spells and their prayers in this game. So that's a big chunk of points that didn't do much, but that's just down to the dice. I do like them. So I might try a list very similar to this. If I haven't got my Vanguard Paladors ready yet by the next event, I might just run this list at a tournament and see how it does. I like the Vigilors. Mediocre damage output, but saving you points on all-out attack, or letting you basically all-out attack with multiple units by getting that +1 to hit on something. That's quite good. Did I miss long strikes in this game? No, because the ideal targets for them are going to be things that can't hide from them very well, like monsters. Hero monsters are the best for shooting at, and there weren't any of those. Like Kragnos would have been great for long strikes, but those units of Ardboys, for example, you wouldn't have killed too many of them with long strikes. And KARAZAI and the Annihilators did a good job on whooping all those units. So is that the future? If I think I'm going to be coming up against large amounts of wounds, is KARAZAI the one to use? And what else would I put in there with him to maximise the damage output? Are Vanguard Paladors with the Javelins the way to go? Because you get to shoot when you get into combat, so you get multiple goes at attacking, and that's another unit that doesn't care particularly about going first in combat, because they've already done much of their damage output before they even strike in combat. interesting things to ponder now. Obviously the Star Drake I still like. That's still a tasty option. The Star Drake can trade in directly for those Annihilators, potentially. Although I do like how they performed in this game, even though they failed their charge when they came down, as is the curse of the Annihilators. On the turn they drop down, they have to fail their reroll charge. And they do kind of force you to take the double, or they forced me to take the double, because I wanted to get something out of them. And taking the double is not always good, as we know. But my opponent was already the underdog, so the only thing I was missing out on was one battle tactic in one turn. And of course, in that turn I murdered... How many points did I kill in that one turn where I took the double? Because the Ragers countercharged into me. So I ended up killing, let's see, they were 240 points, and the Reinforced Ardboys were 360 points. So that is a good juicy 600 points of units I was able to kill on that double turn. So that was definitely worth it. And did anyone feel like they couldn't contribute anything to the game? The Vexilor did his healing effect a couple of times on KARAZAI. He didn't feel super important because KARAZAI wasn't getting destroyed that much. There was one point where KARAZAI got down to 5 wounds and he was able to get 1,000,000 attacks suddenly, which was amazing. That felt really good, getting loads of extra attacks on KARAZAI because he's wounded. And then you can heal him up after that. That felt good. So Vexilor, I need to give him a run of games to see how he does. Praetors obviously did very well because of my dice rolling, making their ward saves. And the fact I was killing the Ironjaws so easily was helped by the fact that they couldn't make any of their ward saves either, while they had ward saves. And then once I deleted the unit of 10, the unit of 20 didn't have one after that. So, felt good. Felt like a good, decent list. Might try out this or something very similar to it at an event. Let me know what you think. Which units you think would complement KARAZAI, and what else you think the list needs if it's going to compete. If there's any kind of meta lists out there that you think this would struggle massively against, then let me know, and what you would potentially draft in to deal with those imminent threats that I could come up against. Well, what's coming up next? Well, this weekend there is a Star Wars Shatterpoint tournament, so I'll be reporting on that. I won't be using Ewoks this time, because I've actually got my own models painted, so I don't need to borrow somebody else's. So I've got Obi-Wan as the star of the show, so that's going to be fun. The next Age of Sigmar event, let me have a look at my little tournament diary here. So we've got one fairly close to the start of February, so that should be good, and there's Old World before that as well. And then after that, there is Kings of War, more Old World, and Sigmar, and Star Wars, and just alternating between those games for the next few months, basically. Old World, Age of Sigmar, Star Wars, Shatterpoint, Kings of War. Fun times ahead. And you can look forward to seeing more battle reports as well. So I've got so many Stormcast units. If I only ever play in tournaments, certain ones won't see the table very much. So if I want to experiment with things outside of a tournament setting, then just the battles at the local gaming club are going to be the place to do that. I've got a lot of units, some of which are going to be retired. So I like the idea of the Judicators becoming Vigilors. I think a lot of people will be doing that with them, because they're just Stormcast guys with bows. So it's the logical choice that they would turn into Vigilors. Vigilors without cloaks. How about that? I think that makes sense. Right, time to wrap this one up. And don't forget to check out all the links in the description. There's various social media shenanigans down there. There's Facebook group, Discord server, if you want to see what I'm doing and all the things I'm painting and such. And hopefully you'll be able to see the Vanguard Paladors finished within the next week. I'm staring at them, I can see all the work that needs to be done on them. But I'm probably over halfway now. Need to highlight some hooves next. Don't forget, if you find this channel just a beacon of light in an otherwise dreary and smoggy and foggy and unnavigatable hobby existence, then why not pledge your entire life savings on the Patreon or the PayPal links down there as well, so I can keep providing endless battle reports and tournament reports with fresh new units. Tournament tickets ain't cheap. And my hobby budget, I'm kind of readdressing that at the moment by selling some things on eBay. I've been selling some Rune Wars stuff that I picked up quite cheap a while ago. and I sold the Skaven half of Skaven Tide, because I'm never going to need that. And that's how I'm funding my recent purchases. Okay, exciting times ahead. KARAZAI, is he the future? Let me know what you think. All that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.